I'm really excited that we have some of our neighbors and friends with us here today to teach us about the North Country Trail. So we're going to be hearing from Aaron Landon, who has traversed the entirety of the trail and is a new Eliite. We're going to hear from Ozzie Raif, who's working on developing the new chapter of the Trail Association Boundary Waters. And we're going to hear from Jeff Pike, who is also a member of the association and is an early adopter of the trail, having first part of it in the 80s. So let's welcome Jeff Pike up to the microphone.
Good morning. Glad to see so many folks. Looks like a good day. Glad you could all come. And the first question I had was with the North Country Trail. Does anyone know, other than I saw a lot of people looking just a little while ago at the maps, etc., which we're glad to see. Does anyone have any knowledge of it before you got here today? Raise your hand. You got good, good. Out of that, see if we get this to work. Yes. Out of that, is anyone other than Aaron hiked it? We have any hikers of the North Country Trail? Couple. Good, good. We will soon have a lot more hikers of the North Country Trail, I hope. So that's part of our goal today. Anyway, the North Country Trail is a national scenic trail, and it's caught up to us. I'll go through and give us a little bit of the background of it, how it came about and when. And as Lacey mentioned, yes, when they were starting it out back in the early 80s, I had a chance to walk a good chunk of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan's segment, although at that time it was still being developed, and so there were some challenges, but still very fun and scenic trip. The North Country Trail came about first in 1971. They put together a commission to study it, and things like trail, it takes a long time to come about. So here we are 50 years ago, and we have a commission looking at it. And it was finally in 1980 passed in the law as an act to amend the 1968 Trails Act that existed at the time. So that got things rolling, but that was 43 years ago. So it's been like kind of getting a ball rolling and getting momentum and things, but we're moving along, and I'll show you some of the stats in a little bit. But the North Country Trail, it's a national scenic trail, and all the national scenic trails, I'll talk about them a little bit. There's 11 of them in the country, and they're managed by the National Park Service. So they provide the oversight and management from a federal level, and then they work with local agencies, state agencies. I'll talk about the North Country Trail Association, which is a nonprofit. They work very closely with that group, and the people that are local, the boots on the ground to make the whole thing happen. So that's kind of the overall umbrella on how it works. The North Country Trail Association, which I just mentioned, is a nonprofit. It's a 501c nonprofit. It was organized in Michigan, which is mid trail, so it makes sense to have it in Michigan. It was organized in 1983, and it's a national organization, but then it's supported by local chapters and state divisions and things like that. I've got the mission on here, which I'm sure you can't read in the back, but basically it's to promote the trail and to work with the Park Service in coordinating the trail development and maintenance of the trail. So that's the organization that, if you want to get involved, you're going to be involved as a member of the North Country Trail Association and of the chapter that you're with. Okay, some numbers about the trail, which I think is pretty amazing. The trail is 4,800 miles long, and it covers 8 states. It's if you start from the west, it's in North Dakota, comes through here in Minnesota, cuts across northern Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, down through Michigan, does a big loop down through Ohio, cuts across Pennsylvania, New York, and in Vermont, it enters the Appalachian Trail. And so it's an extensively large amount, 4,800 miles. I mean, just think about that. You're going to drive 4,800 miles. It's a long drive. I just 2 weeks ago did 2,100 and I was exhausted. So, and that was in a car, let alone on the foot. Contrast that to the Appalachian Trail. Everybody's heard of the Appalachian Trail, right? Anyone not? Yeah. Appalachian Trail runs from Georgia to Maine. Years ago, I used to hike that, and I've hiked several states in Georgia and Pennsylvania, Maryland. It's a beautiful trail. They started in 1937 or 1921 and got it completed in 37. So it still took a long time even then to get a trail rolling. I think they had a lot less challenges with private ownership in the route that they used along the Appalachian Mountains versus what we're doing today with the North Country Trail. But also doing that in the 20s and 30s, I think was probably less development and things like that as well. So, and there's still sections on the Appalachian Trail where they're on roads and it's not a footpath in the forest yet. But it's only 2,200. We're at 4,800, so quite a difference between the two. It's the longest. I said there were 11 national scenic trails in the country. It's by far the longest. Interesting fact: 40% of people in the United States live within a day's drive of the North Country Trail. So if you wanted to take a trip and go hike for a few days or whatever, it's not that far away to get to for many, almost half the country. It covers 10 national forests, including the Superior here, and 150 federal, state, and public land areas. Some of the areas I've hiked on are National Lakeshore in UP, around the Munising area. It goes through Porcupine Mountain State Wilderness area in the UP. So again, another example of a public land that's a beautiful area the trail traverses through. And if you're hiking, you can do sections like that and just have a wonderful time and beautiful scenery. There's more than 3,100 miles built to date. So we still have some work to do. This area we'll be talking about a little bit more in particular, and it's an area that we have to get done, that it's a lot on roads right now, but we're moving rapidly on getting some of the sections moved off. There we go. There's the 11 trails around the country. And if I get the thing to work, here is the North Country Trail, and you can see there's Ohio, and then there's terminus over by the Appalachian Trail. Appalachian Trail. That's always a good question, is the Great Lakes. I heard the question how to get across. Let me get the slides back on gear here and I'll show you. Yes. I'm trying to hit the pointer and I hit the slides. So. There we go. Okay. The brown line is the North Country Trail, and it goes through the UP, so that gets us around Lake Michigan. And then it goes across the Mackinac Bridge to get to the lower part of Michigan, and then goes south through Michigan and then goes through Ohio, so it goes south of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. So that gets us around the Great Lakes. Rivers are always a challenge. And we have the same problem here with the Quishway River, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But there's a lot of rivers, and there's been a lot of bridges built, but it takes time to get and a lot of resources to get bridges built. But anyway, I was saying you can see the Appalachian Trail over on the western part of the country, the Pacific Coast Trail. Some of you may have heard of that. The Continental Divide Trail. Some awesome trails around the country. But you can see the length again of the North Country Trail and how it stacks up against some of the other trails in the country. Here's a better map of it, and you can see the Mackinac Bridge part. And you can also see how it starts in North Dakota and comes through Minnesota. And I'm going to talk in a section. Shortcut for Minnesota would be to just cut right across from the Chippewa National Forest over to Duluth. And in a couple minutes, or in a second, I'll talk about the reroute where it comes up through our area, which is a lot longer, but far more scenic than just that shortcut. And then you can see the other states, and quite an extensive system. For those that are closer, you can see where the lines change. Is an example where it's still on roads versus a footpath in the forest. But the red lines, the bold red lines, is where it is completed, and that's the 73% that's done today. So by far, that's a lot of trail. We're at, I think, what's 3,200 miles, which is significant. There's some stats by state, and you can see on those how much is on road and how much is off road, and off road is basically a footpath in the forest. Minnesota, we have almost 700 miles that's off road at this point, and we have 160 to go that are still on road, or in our area, on road would include designating the Mesabi bike trail as an alternative to walking the Fernberg or a state highway, something like that. So those are some of the numbers. But you can see the 4,800 is the total. You've got 1,600 to get finished and 3,200 that are done. And these numbers kind of jump around a little bit because as sections get completed, mileage changes, or reroutes and mileage change. So if you're trying to always add them up, they might not work. And this is what's happened over the last year in 2002. There were 87 miles of new trails built, so we're plugging away at it. 44 of that was reroutes off highways. An example that we'll talk about in a little bit is the Fernberg Road. Right now, if you look at the designation for the North Country Trail, it would take you out to Fernberg, out to Snowbank, and we're working to get that moved off. There's right now 3,200 that's being maintained. Once we get it built and moved off the highways, we still have to maintain it, blowdowns happen, you name it, reroutes happen, those type of things. So there's always work to be done. I mentioned earlier about the chunk coming up through here versus cutting across from the Chippewa National Forest to Duluth. That's what we call the Minnesota reroute. And that was approved in 2019. Before that, they were looking to bring it across, and it was going to be 70 miles of wetlands. It never would have worked. It was just trying to go across wetlands means putting in boardwalks and the expense of putting them in, maintaining them. And frankly, boardwalks are not that much fun to walk because they can be slippery and dangerous, etc. The good news is the reroute. It took the trail and brought it through Ely. It brings it across over to the Keck at Snowbank Lake, across the Keck to the border route trail, which then connects to the Superior Hiking Trail, which runs the North Shore down to Duluth. Everybody's familiar with those trails, I'm going to guess, maybe? No. But anyway, what that means is right now you can pretty much start at Snowbank Lake and walk to Duluth via trail. Once we get the sections done around Ely, you could start in Ely and walk to Duluth. And if you want it back, so always good. And there is, I was mentioning the reroute, and that's basically, if you took, that would have been the 70 miles with wetlands and the like, and that's what we ended up avoiding, so. In Minnesota, we're 73% complete and around 850 miles. And as I mentioned, these other trails are already part of it with the reroute. And once we get the area done through Ely, then that'll tie into that, giving us a very nice long segment. So we're excited with that. I mentioned the North Country Trail Association, the nonprofit, and it survives with having local chapters. That's the local people, the feet on the ground people. And in our area right now, there's the Keck chapter, and they maintain the trail west of Ely over to the Borderland Trail. And then there's the Arrowhead, which up until now would maintain the trail from Grand Rapids to almost Snowbank or to Ely, I think is how they have it right now. Huge swath. So we're about to see some change with that. And I'll let Ozzie get into that a little bit more here in a second. So what we're doing is we're seeing a brand new chapter in a few days, but actually when I wrote this slide, it was a few days. As of tomorrow, it should be official that we'll have the Ely Northwoods chapter of the North Country Trail Association. So we'll have the chance to have the local group in place and official. So that's a big thing. And with that, I would like to bring up and introduce the new president of the chapter, Ozzie Raif. Ozzie.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So yeah, I just want to kind of share some of what's happening in the Ely area with the North Country Trail. Jeff did a great job kind of describing big picture why it's so important, and I kind of want to talk about locally why it's going to be such an important thing for our town, and then hopefully convince some of you to be a part of that process. So yeah, the North Country Trail comes through Ely. Currently, the route goes down Sheridan Street. So if you've been on Sheridan Street, you've been on part of the North Country Trail. We have this National Scenic Trail that everybody in this room has been on. Of course, you still have a few thousand more miles to do if you want to do the whole thing, but that's a start. And I think it's going to bring a lot of really great things to this town. The first is increased opportunities for hiking, right? We have a lot of really great hiking opportunities near Ely, but most of them you have to get in a car and drive to. We're closer than a lot of other folks to these opportunities. It might be a 5 to 30-minute drive to get to some of the local trails. But just imagine down Sheridan Street and then just get into the forest from there. It'll be kind of like the bike trail that we have now, where you can just ride right from your house and get into the wilderness, into the woods, and enjoy all of the great nature we have surrounding us. The second really exciting piece is the economic opportunities. Ely is super well situated to deal with hikers when they come through town, whether they're through hiking or doing a shorter hike, maybe from Ely to Grand Marais or Ely to Duluth. We have all the amenities already. We have bunkhouses, we have showers available. We have a ton of great restaurants like the Gel. We have a ton of bars where hikers can get a beer after their 40-mile day, things like that. So we have all these pieces that a lot of towns are missing and kind of have to develop when they have this opportunity presented to them. So that's a really exciting piece. And it's something that the town can lean more into. An official trail town. There are currently 3 in the state of Minnesota. So we could be trail town number 4 in Minnesota, which is pretty cool, I think. And because of those things that I kind of talked about, we're pretty well situated to have that be successful. And it can be something that we start to be known for, kind of like how we're known as the canoe capital of the world or of Minnesota. We could also become the hiking capital of Minnesota, which would be pretty neat. Just as an example, this town called Damascus in Virginia is the Appalachian Trail. It's kind of the convergence of a few different trails, which is sort of like Ely, right? We have a few different trail systems that converge here. Every year they do this thing called Trail Days. And this town of 800 people sees more than 20,000 hikers show up in their town. They spend a weekend there. They have a whole tent city set up for these people. And it's just a bunch of day hikes, a bunch of group activities. They have a ton of like the top ultralight backpacking vendors show up, and they have a wait list for those vendors that's more than a year out to attend this event. So that would be a really cool thing that we could have something similar happen here. And so, yeah, like Jeff said, like I've been saying, we're starting the Ely Northwoods chapter. And so what does that mean? Well, we had to recruit 10 members. So we have 10 members that have committed to joining or have joined the chapter. I'm hoping there are a couple more members in this room that just don't know you're a member yet. So basically that started the formal process. We put in a charter application to the North Country Trail Association, and their board is going to be meeting at their quarterly meeting tomorrow. And if everything goes as planned, they will approve that application. And then we'll officially be a chapter of the North Country Trail Association. And so one of the big benefits of that is that we can receive resources from the National Park Service. So kind of preempt some of those resources as far as like some of the GIS work they've been doing. So like the mapping and things for some of the sections we've been looking at. But also they've sent us a bunch of tools. So once we have the plan figured out, we can construct the trail. One piece that we'll need a lot of volunteers for as well. We're starting to support us from that standpoint. So I think it's pretty much assumed that we will become a chapter tomorrow. If not, I'll have a bunch of free tools for anyone who wants any. And yeah, of course, we also need more members. We need more volunteers. You can volunteer without being a member if you don't want to pay the yearly $40 annual membership fee. But you get some cool stickers if you do pay it. So we have, this is kind of the section that we're going to be in charge of. So we're all right here in Ely. And we have about a 15-mile stretch from Cowisley Falls right there down to Bearhead Lake State Park right down there. That's going to be kind of the starting purview of this chapter. Right now, the Kekakavik Trail Club is working on a section from Cowisley Falls to Snowbank Lake way out there at the end of the Fernberg. And that's going to be kind of how far they're going to be willing to get the trail initially. So that's about 20 miles of getting the trail off the Fernberg that they're hoping to accomplish, which is a pretty big task, but a lot of it's kind of underway right now. So from right there, you see it says end of the flags on Glippy Road. The Kekakavik Trail chapter has flagged from Lookout Road to Glippy Road. It's about 12.5 miles. And they have this route that goes off of the Fernberg. It's south of the Fernberg, kind of goes through the roller portage on Triangle and Ojibwe Lake, if you know where that is. So it's a pretty neat route that the Forest Service is going to be conducting a NEPA study on to see if it's going to have any environmental or cultural impacts. I believe that's happening this fall. And so if that goes through in the next season to 2 seasons, that trail is going to be able to be worked on, which is pretty exciting. And once that gets to Cowisley Falls, obviously there's going to be a bit of a road walk because you have to get across the bridge. But hopefully someday we can have a pedestrian lane on that bridge or something similar, open to ideas and sources of funding. So yeah, where do things stand right now with the Ely chapter? So far we've done some stuff kind of getting the word out. So we've some folks from this group have helped host a hiker social in town. Some of you might have been there at the folk school this past fall. We did a kind of a, not quite this thorough of a presentation, but kind of an informal on the trail. We had the Kekakavik Trail Club was there also talking about the work they've been doing. And we actually found a lot of the core members of this Ely Northwoods chapter at that event. Then we've also had some day hikes. So most recently, a group of it was like 8 people from Ely hiked that flag section along the Fernberg. So it was really neat to check it out. Have some pictures following this so you can see what it looks like in the woods out there. Looks very different than just the side of the road. And then also we're working on raising awareness. So we were at the Harvest Moon Festival and we've kind of done some presentations to other groups like the Chamber of Commerce to get people in Ely aware that the trail is here. And then aware that we need help and aware that it's something that you can work on, things like that. And then of course, we're always looking for ideas. So just at the Harvest Moon Festival, we were given some names of people that might know some good, maybe old logging roads or old hunter trails, kind of heading west from here down to Bearhead Lake State Park. So we're looking for things like that. We want this to be a community project that's really driven by the community. Because so many of you have been here so much longer than I have, and you have so much more knowledge than I do. We're really looking to have everybody kind of buy into this and share your ideas with us. So here are some scenes from that hike. So you can see one of the flags right there. This is kind of a nicer section of the flagged route. Matt Davis is right there. He's kind of the regional coordinator for the North Country Trail Association. So he came up for this hike, which was really fun to have him there. And obviously there's still some logs and things in the way. It's not a trail yet by any stretch of the imagination, but you can kind of follow the flags if you know where they are. On the left side or your right side, you can see Eric Campbell, the president of the Kekakavik chapter. He was about 6 feet ahead of me right there, and I definitely lost him at a couple of points going through this one really thick patch. But we made it through there and found the flags again, and then came out to this really nice stand of great old white pines. There are a lot of these really nice white pines and red pines back in that area that I never knew were there. I've driven the Fernberg hundreds of times and never imagined that that tree would be out there just waiting for somebody to walk by. So really cool stuff that I think the trail is going to be going by. There's a really great berry patch out there. If people like doing that sort of stuff, it'll be a good access point to get out there. And then where are things going? So obviously we want to have some more kind of community study sessions to see what your ideas are, what people have to offer, things like that. And then we also want to have kind of a more formal presentation to the Parks and Rec Board in Ely and to the City Council. I've talked with some of the counselors, and the ones I've talked with are pretty excited about this opportunity. But to become a trail town officially, it does take the council and the Parks and Rec Board wanting it to happen and kind of doing some work in that process. So that's probably one of the next steps coming up, is doing that sort of formal relationship building with them. So of course, if you have a good connection to your city councilors, let them know that you think this is a good idea. Things like that. And then of course, fostering more partnerships. This trail is going to be coming through Ely. We really want it to be an Ely thing. So whether that's the college having some of their students on the trail as part of majors, perhaps having the college help build a campsite or something like that along the trail, whether it's working with Hidden Valley to perhaps go through some of their trail system and create some sort of like joint maintenance plan where the hiking folks can help maintain some of the ski trails and vice versa. Really looking for those connections because there's so much overlap with all these trail systems we have in our area. Yeah. And so how you can help, you can join the chapter if you're interested in doing that. Like I said, we'll also take your volunteer efforts if you aren't a member, and also sharing your ideas and skills. So we're going to need people who are interested in doing kind of that volunteer on the work. As you can see from those pictures, there's a lot of brush in the way and trees in the way. So we're going to need people out there swinging tools, but we also need people who are willing to do the behind the scenes coordinating, whether that's events planning, marketing or social media, things like that. Any skills that any organization needs, this chapter is going to need as well. And then spread the word, just tell your friends and neighbors. This was probably the biggest group of people I've seen raise their hands with any knowledge of the trail so far. But so many people in town haven't heard about it. So spreading the word is such a key piece of this process. Okay, and now I'd like to invite up Aaron. His trail name was Soda, and he hiked the whole North Country Trail before he moved to Ely. So come on up, Aaron. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. As you were saying, my name is Aaron. My trail name goes Soda. I'll explain what that's about later if you guys want me to. But my hiking career started about 9 years ago. I was working in Rochester, Minnesota in a factory. I owned my own business, and I decided one day that I wanted to pursue through hiking. In my earlier teens, I had come up to the Boundary Waters and spent a lot of time on Snowbank Lake, and that's where I first had heard about the North Country Trail on some of those campsites back there. So in my early 40s is when I decided to cash in on my factory jobs and my business, and I got rid of my home and my cars, and I started through hiking. My first through hike was in 2018 down in Florida, and that is where I first completed my very first through hike. I started in February and I finished in March. So it took me about 3 months to finish this hike. When I did finish it, I did not think I was going to finish it, but when I did finish it, I decided to pursue these dreams I had earlier in life, which was this North Country Trail I had learned about back in my teenage years and my 20s. But the Florida Trail compared to the North Country Trail was completely different. I was not about to attempt 4,800 miles. I had only hiked 1,000 miles to begin with. So I put together a list of 7 different trails that I wanted to prepare myself to hike before getting onto the North Country Trail, which 3 years later, I did finish those 7 trails that I had put together. Life opportunities handed it to me to where I could take a break from everything that was going on in Rochester. And on March 25th of 2002, I decided to pursue my dream of hiking the North Country Trail. And over the next 256 days, I walked, starting in Lake Sacagawea State Park in North Dakota and ending in Defiance. And how that happened was I did a flip-flop hike. I walked from North Dakota to Ohio. And when I got to Ohio, I got on a plane and I flew out to Vermont and I hiked back to Ohio. So I finished my hike in the middle of the trail instead of at the end of the trail. There were an awful lot of things that happened over those 4,800 miles. To put it in time perspective, that was actually 8 months, 8 days I walked, averaging about 26 miles a day is what I was walking. And that was an average. Thank you. And the biggest thing that I gained from this trail was a network of people called trail agents. I had, over the 7 years of hiking, I had kind of gathered a great intel and skill set of hiking the trail itself, but I didn't really quite know about this association of trail angels. And that's what actually got me through the 4,800 mile trail of the North Country Trail, was these trail angels that actually helped me along the way. They helped me by taking me into their homes, by feeding me, by bringing me gear out to the trail, and actually motivating me in the times of the times I wanted to quit. There was a lot of times over 4,800 miles I didn't want to do it anymore. I thought that 3,000 miles was good enough. I could quit and go home. I realized I didn't have enough time to get out to Vermont before the snow fell, and that was another reason I wanted to quit. But this Trail Angel network was beautiful in keeping my spirits up, by filling me full of calories to get me to the goals that I had set for myself. And that was the biggest take back from this trail that I had gained, was the Trail Angel Association. And it's a formal association of people out there that are willing to help us hikers get through all these roadblocks, stumbling steps that we were going in, and just help promote in their own way and be active on the trail without having to hike the trail itself. So that was the biggest part of my hike that I took away, was the Trail Angels, the kindness that was shown to me. I did take about 2 years off of hiking before this trail. So I had been away from the trail network for a while, kind of reverted back to society's way of living. And I wasn't quite, I was buying into, a lot of people were at odds, and society wasn't quite the way I wanted it to, where this trail brought me back to, this world's a beautiful place. This community that we live is a beautiful thing. And the people out there are full of kindness. It wasn't like what I was seeing on TV anymore. And just these random acts of kindness I was receiving along the way were just the most beautiful things that I took from this trail. It just shot me right back into, people are good. These trail communities and these hiking communities are purely out there for the kindness and nothing else. There's no monetary gain that they're getting from it. They just want to help. And it was a huge ego booster and morale booster for me, just to see this kindness again being given back, with zero strings attached, zero strings whatsoever. So I did finish up the North Country Trail on December 5th of last year of 2022. And I've been hiking for about 7 years at that point. everything in my body was screaming at me to stop, but my mind wanted to keep going. And so I was trying to figure out what my next step in life was. And I ended up taking a job up at Snowflake Lodge, just up on the Fernberg Road, where I could still be connected to the hiking community, but I didn't necessarily have to walk 3 miles a day. And my body was very happy for that decision. My mind wasn't quite so happy about it, but my body was very happy. So as of now, I'm taking a break for the next couple months, maybe even next year, and just letting my feet rest. I've joined the Tectonic chapter of the North Country Trail, so we're helping build that new trail that Ozzie was just talking about along the Fernberg Road, and maintaining the rest of the Tectonic that goes through the boundaries. So that's what I'm doing right now after I put my hike. And now I'm return the favor of the kindness that was shown to me and try to give that kindness back. Maybe a quarter of a mile from the Tectonic Trail. So all the through hikers that are coming through, I've been making it a point to stop them, bring them to a lodge. I can now give them somewhere to sleep, something to eat, and just another same mindset to talk to that can actually understand what they're going through. There's one that came through today or this year that was wanting to quit when he got to this. And I knew that feeling 100%, where I could actually boost him back up. And I took him off trail for a couple of days and actually showed reasons why he should quit him the same exact thing that people were giving me when I was in that same exact spot. So it's a beautiful thing to actually hike the entire trail and experience the kindness, and I'll have the opportunity to give it back to the other people that are hiking this trail too. So yeah, that's my short little story of the North Country Trail. So thank you guys.
All right, folks, does anyone have a question for any of our 3 presenters? I'll start over here and go around. I see you. Forgive me.
How many people are coming through right now on the trail? Is it 1 or 2 a week, or do you see quite a few of them?
Aaron, bigger than I do. I think it's not a ton currently, but
With the through hikers, there was. Well, Joan Young was finishing up her through hike that she started last year. So she was hiking on the trail this year, but she wasn't through hiking the trail. For through hikers that are hiking the entire trail, there was one that came this year. Sea Otter Bernie Krause was his name, and he's actually finishing up sometime this week. He's in Ohio. He did the same thing with in Ohio, and he should be finishing up within the next week or 2.
Was it personal reasons and strategy that you did the flip, or was there something else to it?
When I started hiking this trail, just like with all my other trails, finishing the trail was one goal of mine, but experiencing the trail was more of a goal. I didn't want to rush through this trail and just get the miles done and get the glory of finishing the trail. I wanted to actually experience all the different aspects of this trail. So the first half of the trail, I was stopping at every opportunity that I could find. Any of the trail crews that I came across, I stopped and actually helped them build parts of the trail. I was maintaining trails with work crews. And so when I got to my halfway point, I was so far behind schedule that I couldn't make it out to Vermont before the winter started. So the way to rectify that, to be able to continue hiking and complete the entire trail, was to go out to Vermont first now and hike back to Ohio. So when the winter hit, I was in the Ohio section, not the Vermont section. So that was the main reason why I decided.
There was another hand, I thought, but.
So thanks, it was great. And I'm Steve Fry, I guess we haven't met, but my question is, we want to be the friendliest trail town in the whole world. We want Ely, Minnesota to be known as the friendliest trail town that you can come across. What can we do? What are the services that we need to offer to people as they come through, whether they're day hike, section hikers or through hikers? And secondly, what's the next trail you're gonna hike?
Well, the next trail I'm gonna hike is the West Coast path in England. I think that's what it's called, the Southwest path of England. It goes around the south coast of England. I grew up in England, so I kind of want to incorporate England into my hiking as well. To answer your first question, what you can do to help, it goes off of what Ozzie was saying. is that Ely has every single thing that I want when I come through a town. It has the food, it has the restaurants, it has the bunkhouses, it has the kindness, it has the resupply shops, it has every single thing that a hiker really wants. But it definitely needs to be a trail town on this trail. What could the locals do to further that is to reach out to them, to offer them places to stay. There's not a whole lot of camping options in this area. There have been a few business owners I've talked to that have actually opened up their backyards for hikers to actually throw their tents in. Or just even leading hikers to where they think that they have information on where they could camp for the night, where they could eat for the night, and just being very welcoming. You guys have everything that we want here. It's just utilizing those things and offering them to the hikers and making sure that the hikers know about it too. I knew about Ely just because I was from Minnesota, so I was well versed about this town. But a lot of the people coming from Vermont don't know anything about Ely, and as long as we can educate them and throw that out there and make sure that it's being exposed to these hikers, you guys have everything that we want here. It definitely needs to be a trail town, 100%.
I have two questions. One, are you familiar with the term trail magic? And explain that. And secondly, what color are the ribbons on the Chickakawick Trail that you've laid out along the Fernberg?
The ribbons, I believe, are blue. Correct. The blazes on the trail are blue as well, so I'm thinking that's kind of why they went with the blue colored ribbons. And the term trail magic, yes, I'm very familiar with the term trail magic. For those of you that don't know what trail magic is, this is another way that, Steve, to answer your question, to help out hikers, is trail magic is when I'm coming down a trail and somebody has caught wind that I'm coming down the trail, or somebody has told them, they go to the trail and they leave presents on the trail for me. So as I'm coming through the woods, there will be a bottle of beer or bug spray or a bottle of water or a sandwich. It's called trail magic. It's a magic that happens as you're walking down the trail and you have no idea it's going to happen until it happens. And it's one of the most beautiful things. I've come across coolers full of cheeseburgers and sodas. I've come across some pretty amazing trail magic before. Yeah, trail magic is a beautiful thing.
Great. Well, my grandson just started, what would you call brewing drink with THC in it. That's called trail magic. And also, we found a trail. We found a trail. If you go, if anybody knows the Fire Tower Hill Trail, there's the bootleg trail, used to be a logging trail that cuts off from that and goes straight south. At the end of that, we went out there intending to take the bootleg trail, and we saw these blue markers. We walked a mile or so through this gorgeous, mature pine forest.
That was one of my favorite things to do while I was hiking, was to explain to these people and to show these people that I was walking through that had issues maybe sometimes of what was I doing they thought I was on their own property, but I would have people coming over to me questioning what I was doing. And the fact of explaining to them that they have this beautiful asset right in their backyard, they have a trail that runs from North Dakota to Vermont, and explaining this and exposing this trail to them, where they actually, at the end of this conversation, actually jumped on board with me and were actually excited that I was there now. It was actually one of my favorite things to do, was just exposing exactly what's going on here, and that they have a beautiful American asset right in their backyard, and to utilize it. It was by far one of my favorite things to do.
Oh, maybe I missed it, but of all the nicknames that could have Weiss, and of all the beautiful places that you've seen where you've been at your roots, why Ely?
My trail name Soda came from when I was down in Florida. Trail names come from other people usually. They're usually funny stories that have happened on the trail. Mine came from when I was down in Florida. They talk with a very thick Southern accent. And when they heard me talking, and that I kept saying I was from Minnesota, they all kept laughing, and I couldn't figure out why, until finally one of them says, "Your name is Minnesota, or it's soda," because he keeps saying Minnesota. Well, that's my name. It has nothing to do with drinking soda. It has to do with the way I'm talking. They were laughing at me is what they were doing. And, I'm sorry, what was it? Why Ely? Like everybody was saying, the trail comes through Ely, down the Fernburg Road, from the Snowbank Lodge, and then through the Keck. So last year, as I was doing all that, I was coming up the Snowbank, Road. I had stayed at the Snowbank Lodge, where I work now. In my teenage years, that's where I first heard about the North Country Trail, so I just felt it natural to walk back down there. To go to the very first place I ever had heard about the North Country Trail. When I got down there, the owners of the Snowbank Lodge heard my story, they put me up for the day, and they said to me, when you're done, when you get done walking, remember at this time, I still had 4,000 miles left to go. So a lot of things could happen in that 4 months, or 4,000 miles. They just offered that when you get done walking and you don't want to walk anymore, there's a job always here waiting for you. I know it's a connection to your childhood, and that you know this place and love this place. And so that's why I chose Snowbank Lodge. It was actually the only reason.
I saw that, so. How did you contact the Trail Angels? And then the other question is, you must have used some kind of electronic devices to help you find your ways to, so you could talk about that a little bit, please. Sure.
Yeah, there's a couple of different apps that we use while we're hiking these trails. A couple of them are on Far Out. It's called Far Out apps. What I use Events. It's an app, it's an automated app that you can download on your phone. So even when you don't have phone service, you can still look at this. It's a GPS app is what it is. So that's how I got my way across most of it. That I needed the maps for. A lot of it, I just followed the actual route Wazes on the trees and just followed that. And connecting with the trail angels, that's kind of, they kind of do that on their own for us. I'm not out reaching out to any trail angels. I just happened to stumble across a group of trail angels up in North Dakota as I was coming through. And they put me up for the night, and they had contacted other trail angels that they knew in Minnesota and let them know that I was coming through. Unbeknownst to me, I had no idea that this connection was going on. So when I came into Minnesota, they were all kind of waiting for my arrival, and they did the same thing for Wisconsin. Then they passed me on over to Michigan. So it was just kind of a word of mouth thing that I really didn't have much to do. I wouldn't even know that it was happening. I'll walk into a town and somebody would come up to me and call me out by name. And most people know me by Soda, not Aaron, but when people started calling me out by Aaron, it was very strange to me. You know, I'd look at them and they would tell me, I'm your new trail angel for the night. If you want to come home, I have steaks to grill for you. So it was nothing that I really did. It was all word of mouth that they were doing. So.
I'm real familiar with the Spear Hiking Trail. When you're on Spear Hiking Trail, you've got a trailhead every 12, 15 miles. But coming either direction that you're going to go through the Boundary Waters areas. Once you leave Grand Marais, you really have almost no chance of resupply. And then once you cross Gunflint Trail and come to Snowbank, there is no resupply. So on the rest of this trail, you're able to stop in at towns, villages, pick up supplies, see other people even. How's that going to be different when people are on the Border Route Trail and the Kakagopik Trail?
Yep. From Snowbank Lodge to Grand Marais is probably the most remote section of the North Country Trail. There are a couple other ones like up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where you've got 180-mile stretches with nothing. But absolutely, when you leave Grand Marais or you leave Snowbank Lodge, I'm going to be the last person you see and tell you that Lake Superior. There are options. What I did was I mailed a food package to Snowbank Lodge, and I picked up 2 weeks worth of food and took with me from the Boundary Waters to get me out to Grand Marais. But there are some options. If you're willing to come off the trail, you can hit the Gunflint Lodge, Clearwater Lodge, and do the same thing. You can have food sent there. Clearwater Lodge was great with helping me out as well. I hiked 3 miles off trail to get to them, and they had pizzas waiting for me. They put me up in a bunkhouse. They gave me showers and all that. So there are a few different things that you can hit between there, but it's a very remote section where you have to do a lot of logistics, and that's what this trail really is about. It's actually about logistics. I hate to say it, but you know, the hiking it was just walking. I was just putting one foot in front of the other. There was a whole 3 years of planning the logistics and how am I going to get food. So as long as you're aware of those sections, you can do it. it takes a little bit more, getting creative of how you're gonna get your food. And that's actually where a lot of these trail angels came into, they were the ones that were resupplying me because I didn't have areas to go get food, so they would bring the food to me.
Aaron, I'm interested in a little bit about your equipment that you use. Your average, maybe height, weight, some of your main tools or favorite tools that you have on the trail.
Sure. This hike was really different with that as well because I was going through all 4 seasons. I wasn't just doing a 2-month thing where I can use one set of equipment. In North Dakota, I had 3 feet of snow, so I had all winter equipment there. Compared to the upper peninsula of Michigan where I had 110-degree weather. I went about it a little differently than most hikes I did. I had a gear person that was holding on to, I stockpiled gear for about 3 years, all sorts of different styles of tents and backpacks and shoes. And so as I was hiking, I would stay in contact with him. And I would tell him, it's getting warmer out, I'd like to mail back this tent and replace it with that tent. So we were finding post offices along the way that I would actually have my gear person sending gear to, and I would mail him home the gear that I was actually using at that time. So when I first started, it was in the winter. So I had many base layers on and heavy stuff, and I was about 28 pounds is what my whole kit. But then when I finished, there's a weird thing in your head that happens at the end of hikes where you don't really care about luxury anymore. You just want to finish that hike. I got down to 7.5 pounds. So I was basically carrying a tent and a sleeping pad and a stove, and all the clothes I had were on my body. I didn't have rain gear. I didn't have water filtration system anymore. I actually had gotten rid of my stove by the very end too. So I basically a sleeping bag and a tent is all I was carrying at the very end. So.
Wow, I'm gonna ask the last question since we're at time. But you mentioned some of that mentality going into the hike and having been a part, witnessing the news cycle and the lifestyle that you lived before entering the universe of through hiking. What are some of the parts of the culture of through hiking that you wish could be more broadly adopted by the culture outside of the people who through hike?
I think it goes back to that kindness thing. I got through this like solely due to the fact of other people, and I wasn't latching onto that when I was in my everyday life running my businesses. It was me. It was me. I was a business owner. It was me, and as much money as I could get in my pocket, as big as I could get my house to be, and none of that mattered. It really didn't. When I got out on that trail and I was eating ramen noodles or somebody had brought me a Coca-Cola, I was so much more grateful for those small little things than I was taking advantage of in my previous life. It's a very hard question to ask. I definitely know it inside, but to verbalize it, it's very hard to do. But it's just that minimalism. I'm not a big, I don't minimalism, but it's definitely one of the biggest things I wish could overflow into normal day life. There's no need in my life to have everything that I had. I'm much happier just doing what I like to do, which is being in the woods and enjoying everyday life.
Cheers. Thank you guys.